In this video, I'm going to share with you a really fun session I had with one of my long-standing students this week, and we approached his kind of stubborn lifelong pattern from a different perspective than we would do normally. So let me start by introducing Peter. Peter is a good friend of mine, and as I say, he's had coaching on and off for a number of years, but he has a certain pattern, and one you might recognize. And there are other things going on here. Please don't comment on all the things that you might like to see Peter do better. The dominant kind of characteristics of his pattern are clearly that kind of over-the-top motion in transition and the club getting out in front of him in the downswing. Now, looking at that, we've approached that, historically we've approached that from the traditional viewpoint of swing path and is it out to in to out. And we've gone from out to in, and then, of recent times, he's been severely in to out in a way that he couldn't deliver the club. So in to out and pulling on the club, and then having to stand up and throw it and causing kind of back issues and really kind of moving out of posture. So, the obvious kind of drop it down the wall and pull it from behind you, that's no good either. I mean, that's just creating shanks and tops, and certainly in Peter's world. So, in this session, we approached it, as I say, slightly differently. Instead of thinking about the swing in the 2D perspective, we approached the session from the perspective of torques and forces. So, what are you actually doing to the handle? And without getting too sciencey and mindy, these are the essential things that you're going to be doing to the club. You're going to be creating a force on the club that pulls it around a circular arc. So that is our tangential force. So that looks like this. If I can create that, that's the club being pulled around that hand path. But there's also, we need to consider how we're rotating the club. And we rotate the club mainly on two axes, and that is this kind of up and down motion. So traditionally we think of that as wrist hinge, wouldn't we? And we need that. Obviously on its own it's casting, but we do need to have that unwinding of the club on that axis. But we also need the club to be working around itself on this axis. So a more kind of rounded torque. And in Peter's case, generally speaking, we would need a fluid blend of all three, the pulling on the club, the arcing this way, and the arcing around in this manner. Now, looking at Peter's swing from that perspective, there is a heavy dominance there as he starts down of that pulling of the club and the hinge motion. So there's that motion. If we then put that from the inside, so okay Peter, carry on doing that, but swing from the inside, he's still pulling, he's still unwinding this way, massively into out, and just presenting the hosel to the ball. So we needed to add some of this rounded motion. And when coaching and science really kind of come together and are aligned, we have this informed approach, which ends up being a really kind of simple bat and ball concept for the athlete. And that's what we had with Peter here. So Peter's job was well, first of all, we actually played what I would call my game of range hockey. So we split the hands, and Peter's task was to just make some half swings with a wedge and get the club behind him so it's a little bit shut, in golf terminology. He hasn't actually done anything to the handle. And then swing the club around to meet the ball. Remember, we're trying to introduce this rounded torque on the handle. So there's not a kind of big up and down wristy motion. It's just behind him and around to strike it. And we were quite playful with it and just sort of nudged the ball 50 yards or so forwards. And then we introduced the bag and really starting to get that concept of introducing the around motion. So Peter, you can see here making some bigger swings, still slightly shut face, and getting the feel of how the club has to arc this way. Historically, he'd be arcing that way. Can we get it to swing around? And at no point in the whole session did we ever talk about swinging from the inside or swing path in any way, just getting the club to arc around. And one of the key things with that is when we do get the club to arc around successfully, and actually comes back dead straight in front of us, it aligns with us without us having to do any kind of manipulation to the face. Previously, he'd have been pulling from the inside and then really struggling to square the face, and this is where we get a lot of those shanks and persistent high right shots. So then we did a few more swings to the bag, where we actually in session did a few right-handed swings, which is quite fun, again with the emphasis on how the body rotates and the club swings around in this manner. And you can see in Peter's video there, the motion is just entirely different, again without ever mentioning the word inside. Can you, Peter, just get the club behind you and arc it around to meet the bag? And sure enough, his body's rotating better than it had done previously. He's able to stay in posture because the force of the club isn't pulling him out of posture anymore. And the whole thing looks a whole lot more orthodox, I suppose. So then we move on and we see Peter actually putting that to the ball. So don't go thinking, oh, it's just the bag. He wouldn't be able to do that to the ball. That is exactly what he did. He then just threw a ball down, but with this whole different sense and concept of what he's trying to do to the handle, the swing is really starting to change now. But as I say, not from a 2D perspective of thinking about positions or alignments, P3 or any of that kind of stuff. What is the actual forces and rotations that he's doing on the club? So that was a really fun session that ended up being quite intuitive, really, and made a completely different change to the way that Peter's rotating the club around him. So that was Peter's session, and I know Peter left kind of skipping out the door with a really kind of exciting, new, intuitive, easy to understand concept that's going to, one would hope, really change the way that he moves. I don't suspect that is the way we should be approaching everybody who swings over the top. It worked with Peter because we identified there was a strong dominance of the way he pulled and arced the club this way, and we had to kind of introduce the more rounded torque on the club. Of course, there's many ways to swing over the top, and that approach isn't going to fit them all. So don't go thinking that is me saying that's how we fix over the top. What I am saying is I think there's great mileage in thinking about the way that we pull and the way that we rotate the club that can help kind of circumvent some of these 2D issues that we get stuck in when we think too rigidly in terms of swinging from the inside and how we release the club, etc. If that has kind of sparked an interest, then I will be uploading a few more videos in the coming weeks on torques and forces, and I'll upload a few on YouTube. So if you want to be notified, please click subscribe. And if you're a member of my channel, I'll certainly be creating a section there all around the impact we have and what we're doing on the handle of the club and how we can learn to kind of move more efficiently. If you've enjoyed this video, then please click subscribe and I'll keep you up to date with more coaching information. And if you really want to take your game to the next level, then please visit my website, golfcoach.online, where you'll see there my subscription channel, which is Golf Coach Access, which is all about building a golf coaching and education community and having really structured long-term programs. And the best thing is you can get immediate free access.